I'll do that then. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's October 15th. It's supposed to be nice today. I think I'm gonna go kayaking later today. I got a season pass, which has been such a fun thing for me this year. And they keep extending the day every weekend. It's like, oh, we're open for another weekend. So I think I'll go kayaking later today. But anyway, it's good to be back for another Thrive and Grow session. Good to see all of you. We got Glenn Knowles with us today, and I feel so encouraged by Glenn's story. So I'm just excited, even though I know he said when we were talking it's all doom and gloom, but I know that there's hope and then glimpses of the horizon. But we have to go there. I think I've been thinking so much recently about, sometimes we have to name those breaking points and the challenges in order to understand, right, like where we go from here. And so this week so just a little update about me, and then would love to just hear updates from other folks. But this month we started a partnership between the church and the gym, and we're doing an after school youth movement and mentorship program. And so I've got 10 boys, which is hilarious. I didn't anticipate that it was all going to be boys. So 10 young, Latino boys, middle school, high schoolers. And we are doing this team building activity where they have to cross the toxic river. One of these team building activities where they got to work together, communicate, etc. They've got 15 minutes. Each of them is given one stone that belongs to them, and no part of their body can touch the ground or can touch the river. And so they try to get through the first time. They're not talking to each other, not communicating with each other. So it's a mess, and they can't figure out how to cross the river together. So they fail the mission the first time. Then they go for the mission the second time. One of them is not paying attention, and so they end up falling with their hand and touching the river, so they have to go all the way back to the start. And then finally, the last time, they go a little bit slower, which I thought was interesting, right? They take their time, they try to make sure that they're communicating well. And they finally get to the end of the river, and like 1, 2, 3, they jump out of the river together. But to see the joy on their faces to figure out, like, number one, what are like the breaking points? And then number two, how do we make sure to protect ourselves and each other through the process? And I've just been thinking about so much of how this journey of the past 2.5 years is figuring out, like, what are the breaking points? Where do we need to pivot? Where do we need to tweak? And sometimes where do we need to name like the mistakes and the failures, and how do we go from there? And so one just quick verse that I wanted to share, and then we'll jump right into Glenn's story, but that I've been thinking about is in Lamentations chapter 3, verse 19. And the backstory of Lamentations is doom and gloom, right? Like, the people of Israel have been exiled from their city, Jerusalem. They've been taken captive. And a lot of it was because of their own sin and inability to turn their hearts towards God. Their hearts have become hardened towards God. And they feel abandoned by God. And so they are taken from Jerusalem into the Babylonian Empire. And Lamentations is this series of poems of protest and lament and sorrow, and these moments when it feels like, God, that same thing that Jesus says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And this feeling of abandonment, I think. And in Lamentations chapter 3 is the only time where it's like a personal eyewitness account. Everything else is very collective, but in Lamentations chapter 3, it's like somebody who's been there. He's felt the pain, he's felt the sorrow, he's felt the loss, he's felt the doom, the gloom, the heartbreak, those breaking points where you fall into the toxic river, right? And he says in verse 19, chapter 3, verse 19, remember my affliction and my wanderings, the wormwood and the gall. My soul continuously remembers it, bowed down within me, but I call this to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. And so I've just been thinking about, really naming the challenges and naming the difficulties and being able to identify these breaking points. And that at the end of the day, like, where our hope comes from and our trust comes from, it's like knowing that, yeah, there might be doom and gloom, but therefore I have hope, right? Therefore, I know that the Lord is my portion and that the mercies of God are new every morning. And so, like, how do we both hold space for lament and protest and difficulty and challenges and failures and moments when things don't go our way and we're trying and we're going through we're trying to do all the right things, right? And at the same time, everything falls apart, and yet the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. And I think we have to know the breaking points and name the breaking points in order to make those moves forward and learn how to protect them and learn how to go from there. And so I just kind of been thinking about that this week, even as we continue to pivot and reimagine and go through times of transition, and just really excited to hear Glenn's story and where you've been and what you've been up to. You're throwing parties in the new space though, so when we need a party, we'll know that Glenn has a space for us to throw parties. So with that, Ava's on the call. So good morning, Ava. It's good to see you as well. But I would love to just jump right in. Glenn Knowles, just to hear a little bit of your story. I would love for you to share a little bit about your connection with Thrive and Grow, because you are, a faithful kind of pillar to this community, and then share your story today.
Oh, well, pretty much your whole intro. That's kind of what I'm just going to repeat that in other words. So, hey, Eva. Eva was at the party. So anyway, so my name is Glenn Knowles. I'm an architect. I live in Dorchester. I work in Dorchester. My family and I moved to Dorchester 20 years ago to work with a Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative at the time, and also to directly offer affordable housing. We felt just called to do that. And I've had my own office for 15 years now. It wasn't always in Dorchester, but for the last good while, it's been up the street from my house in Dorchester, in Upham's Corner. And coming out of last time I spoke with you guys, well, actually, let me back up. You want to know about my connection to Thrive and Grow. I think I had gone to a meeting. I don't think it was called Thrive and Grow. Well, it certainly wasn't called Thrive and Grow. It had this really long, cumbersome name. Boston Christian Entrepreneurship, something. Really difficult name. But there was a meeting at CUME, and there were a bunch of people there, and it was really cool. It was like kind of small business owners and people that wanted to be small business owners. And my memory is that after the meeting, I got in touch with, I think, Bishop Ward, and basically debriefed him and said, here's all the great things you guys did, and here's all the things you could do so much better. And this thing's wonderful, and you got to keep it going. And so, of course, then the next call I get is, oh, well, you need to be on the leadership team. I'm like, okay, I guess I asked for that. So yeah, I was on the leadership team for a while until I just had to kind of step down and kind of reprioritize some of my timing and stuff. But again, there were a lot of meetings here at my office. Now my office is a lot nicer. You guys are welcome to use it anytime you want. You know where we are. So that's kind of my connection. Last time I had spoken to you guys, it was mostly about money. It was about some stuff that we had realized in a book that I had read that just completely changed all of our accounting practices and finances that really, really helped us. And last year, our revenues doubled from our average. I mean, our average has been very solid over 13, 14 years. Last year, it doubled. Then came 2022. So here's where the slide starts. And I know that I was telling Sarah before the meeting, I was talking to my daughter, Alexandra. She had read the invite, and she's like, oh my dad, like it's all doom and gloom. And then she said, and you didn't pick that Bible verse, did you? I said, no. I didn't give Armin much at all to work with at all. So part of my, honestly, I don't think in terms of doom and gloom. I always think in terms of hope, but it's so, I don't think to say it. So Alexander reminded me, no, you have to say it because people can't read your mind. So I'm going to try to say it, right, as we go through this. But I've got a couple of verses before I get into kind of how the year went, because Bishop Ward said, "Hey, can you speak?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, "Well, what's been going on?" I said, "Oh, you ought to hear what's been going on. It's been terrible." So he's like, "Okay, we'll talk about that." I'm like, all right. But there are a couple of verses that that I thought of. First one's from 1 Thessalonians 1:3, and this is the opening to Paul's letter to the church in Thessalonica. And it goes, we remember you before our God and Father, your work produced by faith, your labor prompted by love, and your endurance inspired by hope in our Lord Jesus Christ." And that hope Sarah mentioned earlier is what I always have hope, regardless of all these circumstances. I always have hope. And then the other one is Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and who have been called according to his purpose. So we are not without hope. That's, the preface to the whole thing. But we go through stuff. And so I, in my office, but I've gone through some stuff. So I'll share some of that stuff and tell you a little bit of, it's been big enough stuff that I've had to try to figure out ways to process it. So first thing that happened, I think this was in end of January, maybe February. I don't remember that well, but we had a large project, and there aren't that many large, I do mostly churches. There aren't that many large church projects in this area, right? The other thing is, like, there's a couple of things, I'm not going to use any names because, I mean, you might even be able to figure some of this stuff out anyway, but I'll tell you what happened. I just won't use names. But there was a large project we were working on. We were very happy to get the project. Everybody was happy, but there were communication problems from the very beginning. We were having such a hard time with communication with the client that we set up a Slack on our own just for the team, because we weren't, getting feedback, and the client was telling other people different things, and it became very difficult. And it became so difficult that other team members, like the attorney, wanted out, but he didn't quit. We almost quit. We had lengthy conversations with my liability insurance people and their attorneys as to how do you separate yourself, because we didn't have enough coverage in our contract to do it easily. By the way, if you're a professional, get really, really good. This is my big takeaway of the year. Get really, really good liability insurance. It will save you. It will save your butt. Ultimately, we did not quit. We really, seriously, we almost quit. Then in February, we got a call and we were let go, along with everybody else. The contractor, us, all of our engineers, the attorney, everybody, one shot. And I'm sure it was because, I know this, because all the team, the professional team, had told the client a consistent recommendation, and the client just didn't want to hear it. And so they found somebody else that would tell them what they wanted to hear. So that particular event, which was like the first time anything like that had ever happened to me, my team was very happy. They were like, great, this is wonderful. We don't have to deal with that. I'm like, yeah, because I'm thinking cash flow, right? I'm thinking like long-term payroll, cash flow. But ultimately, that wasn't too bad. It was a little embarrassing, but we were also happy. So, that one I could kind of get over pretty quickly, and especially with my team being so happy about it, oddly enough. Then the next thing that happened was I had a remote person who had been named an associate, and we had a partnership agreement. This guy, I've worked with him on and off for years and years and years. I had mentored him back in a corporate firm that we were in. We'd been pretty close. We even had a written kind of partnership document about how we would bring work in. If he brought in work, what was the split, who did the work, how was the fees, I mean, all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of a partnership track. That was the intent. And then I think it had kind of a tentative length duration. That duration came up, and he called and wanted to modify it. I don't remember exactly, but all of a sudden it occurred to me where I realized that what I thought was the partnership arrangement was not what had been happening. So I thought, hey, he's all in, we're all in. And come to find out, he had always been doing his own thing simultaneously, which kind of destroyed the partnership, right? So the partnership, we kept working together, but it kind of dissolved of its own accord. But it was, I don't know, that was kind of difficult and I kept asking the people here, it's like, did you know this? Did you have any inkling of this? Were there any, like, what did I miss? And it answered some questions. There were some questions that I had. It's like, how are you living? You're not getting quite enough hours. You're not doing, we're having a hard time getting you to work as much as we need. Like I knew something was a little funny, but I never put it together. So, but we had been pretty close. So that was kind of, and we're still friends, but that was tough. So the first one was a big job loss. The second one was kind of an employee partnership loss. Then the really big one happened. So we had a housing project. The housing project was what was responsible for our doubling of the revenue the prior year. So we had all of our normal stuff, which added up to kind of the average. And then we had this housing project on top of it, which this one project doubled our revenue. Last year, we had almost finished all the construction drawings, which is the biggest chunk of the fee, but we hadn't billed for all of them. It's a long story. We had billed for most of it, but we certainly hadn't billed for everything that we had done. There had been let me back up a little bit. I have a very old client who had brought me in on this. We started all the work, and then he brought in a partner to do the development, the housing part. And their partnership changed, and my client's partner became in charge. And they had their own architect. And my client insisted that I was the architect, and they were like, well, we have our own architect. They kept me on, but they hired their architect to watch over everything I did, which is not a really good situation. And if you're ever in a similar situation, it's it's bad because in order to justify their fee, they have to just find fault. So there had been some bumps in and out, but we had gotten through almost all of the construction drawings end of last year. It went on hold while we waited for funding. This year we got all the funding, everything came through. They said, oh, we're going to restart it. You know, here's the schedule. How are you doing? Fine. And then out of the blue, I get a call and they fired us. No warning, no reason, no, just like, we're going with our people. And that one was hard because we had done almost all the work. And then also that one got nasty because this time when I called my liability insurance and they really got the lawyers involved, and it started to go back and forth with the attorneys, and for me, it was nasty. It got mean and nasty, and I had to find my threshold of what I was willing to fight. And I found out that other people have a higher threshold than I do for conflict. And, you know, just because you sincerely believe you're owed some money, there are times for me that I had to just let it go and settle for a whole lot less than I thought we deserved, and just try to get out of you're talking about the toxic, try to get out of the situation. You mentioned earlier, Sarah, protecting ourselves and others. This was a situation where I really felt I needed to protect myself and kind of my team. And this was one where the more I talked with my attorneys, and they were like, well, we can fight it, but this is what you have to do. And it was just going to get really ugly, like really ugly. And I just, I didn't have the bandwidth for that. And usually when stuff like this happens, I go in, it's like, what did I do wrong? Where did I screw up? What did I miss? What did I mess up? We went through it, and it's like, we can't figure out what we did wrong. I mean, there were little things here and there. Anything that we did that was not okay, we went way out of our way to correct it, way above and beyond by everyone's account. And we don't know what was happening on their side. We have no idea what was going on. But that one was very hard, that one. And then I was trying to process kind of with my daughters who work with me, like, man, I'm having a hard time kind of mentally kind of getting beyond this and getting back into high productivity. And then I realized that in between the partnership issue and getting fired off of the housing project, because, okay, this may sound, I don't know how it'll sound. You may like it or not like it, but as a male, I tend to put things in boxes, right? So my personal stuff, I tend to generally separate from the business stuff. Although I think we do that, we don't really do that. Subconsciously, we can't really do that. And all of a sudden I realized that in between those the last two issues that came up, my dad had called me and said, hey, doctors are telling me I've got 2 weeks to 2 months to live. Now, he's not dead. they told him that because they've been telling him he needs to do dialysis for the last 4 years, and he just refuses. And he said, they called me and they said, I might have 2 months if I don't do dialysis. I'm not doing dialysis. So he actually is doing dialysis. But I think all of this is to say, even though I didn't think that was part of the work, it was obviously part of the work, or it affected me. And he's actually, because of that, I've been down to see him a lot, and he's doing dialysis, and he's doing okay. I don't know, he's doing okay for now. We'll see. But all of this, when I was thinking of this for today, and it reminded me of about 20 years ago. I went to see, do you guys know who Tony Campolo is? Okay. I have a lot of respect for, I don't agree with everything that Tony says or has written, but I have tremendous respect for him. About 20 years ago, I heard him speak at Harvard, at the Harvard church. Ron Vernon took me to it. And I will never, ever forget the sermon. It was so simple. And he kept talking about, it's Friday, right? So he would say, it's Friday, Jesus is on the cross, he's hanging there, he's dead. Disciples are running around, they don't know what they're doing. Pilate's feeling good about his decision, about how he got out of it. Things look really, really dark. It's Friday, but Sunday's come. And I believe that. I mean, talking about my dad, like, hit me, but that's how I think. Sunday's coming, it's, I don't ever doubt that, right? So I'm actually really looking forward to 2023. We had this big party to kind of celebrate 15 years. It's kind of like a relaunch. And, one of the things that I've learned this year is that when this stuff comes up, for me, I need to deal with it, process it, figure out if there's anything I could have done differently or not, and then just get it behind me. So I can move on and get back about the business, and not just dwell in it. Because if I dwell in it, I'll lose sleep, I'll lose, time, I'll lose all kinds of stuff. And it, stuff happens. A lot happened, but Sunday's coming, right? Anyway, that's my year.
Oh, thanks, Glenn.
Yeah. So it's funny that, the dad thing kind of hit me. But he's better, and I've gotten down to see him every kind of couple of months or so since the spring. So it's good.
Yeah, it puts in perspective, as what you're dealing with your business. You almost put that all aside when you hear that news about your father, and all of a sudden, that is forefront of the mind, I'm sure. I'm thinking, just my initial reaction, because I'm a business owner as well. I have liability insurance. I just lost a client. It's an odd feeling when you try to do your best for everybody, that when you actually lose a client, you just don't quite understand why, or like what happened. Like we gave you everything, we gave everything we could, and now you have to start assessing revenue. You have to start assessing how that's going to affect everything down the line. But like you said, you can't harp on it. You can learn from it and learn very quickly from it, and use that as ammunition. Maybe get as much information from it as possible to see like what happened, so you don't repeat the same mistake. But no room for shame, no room for dwelling on it. Like you said, that's not what we're called to do. That's not what God wants us to do. He wants us to understand he's ultimately the one that's in charge of everything. And no matter what we do, sometimes we have to go through a season and get the fruits of it as much as possible.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in some cases it might be easier, I'm speculating, to lose a client if you knew that, if there's something you could point to and say, man, I blew this, they should have fired me. But but there are cases when that's not what happens. And maybe it's the unknown that's a little bit hard to. One thing I started recently, about a year ago, I started playing tennis. And one of the things that I've learning is that tennis is a sport of errors. And the person that commits the most errors loses, and it's only by a very, very small percentage. Like the greatest tennis players alive only win maybe 4 or 5% more points than their opponents. And so what you learn is that when you make an error, you have to just put it behind you immediately. You have to forget it. And that's very hard for some people to do, because if you don't forget it, you dwell on it, and you don't have time to dwell on it in a match. Because if you think about it for just another 30 seconds, you're going to lose the next point, and then it's just going to spiral. So one of my biggest takeaways from the year is look at it, be honest about it, try to deal with it, and just get past it.
Well, Glenn, thanks so much for sharing. I know it's a lot, holding a lot. And so I appreciate you sharing. I wonder if you could say a little bit more, because you mentioned that a couple times, deal with it, process, ask the questions, and then move on. Are there people, trusted people you talk to, or how do you do that in tennis, probably, but it's in life? How do you, is it journaling? Is it conversations? Is it I'm just curious what the practices are that have supported you in getting through it.
That's fun. Yeah, I've never been able to journal. And funny, tennis is the one sport, not like I'm competitive, but it's not a competitive player, but tennis is the one sport where you can't get coaching during the match. Yeah. But as far as me personally, I'll talk to my wife. I'll talk to my daughters, because I work with them. Yeah. And it's interesting when your family works with you, because they know you. Right. And so, and it's both of my daughters, one of them is very, very discerning. The other one's very, very empathetic, and nothing gets by them. Nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I can talk to both of them.
Yeah.
About pretty much anything. So we're very, very honest about kind of what happens. And now they're into the business enough. Alexandra has a lot of client contact. She knows really what's kind of going on and how things are flowing and which clients need some love and, I mean, kind of all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I talk to them quite a bit. Yeah. And they know me really well. So a while back, I remember something was going on in Haven. Just Haven and I were in the office. She does a lot of the kind of bookkeeping stuff. And she said, why don't you just take the afternoon off and go play tennis? And she didn't mean that like leave the office because I need to get rid of you. She was just like, you're having a difficult time and you're not being productive. And I think you'll be in a better frame of mind if you just take the afternoon off.
Yeah.
So they've helped a lot.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I think like having that family team but work team, but like having people that are discerning and empathetic and, I think that's helpful as we also think about like who are the people that we go to kind of process things so that we can move on.
Yeah.
And not in a way that's like dismissing what happened, but so that we can let it out and then, all right, Sunday's coming. So let's get there. Right. So I think that that's important that you can identify like, these are the things, these are the people I need around me so that I can get there.
And also it's in certain circumstances, it's really nice to have a really good insurance policy where they hire very good attorneys.
Yeah.
To help you.
Yeah.
That was another kind of very new experience for me. And it's a big deal to have an attorney that can speak on your behalf so that you're not having to talk, directly to the person with whom you're having conflict.
Yeah. That's great. And is this a liability insurance you've had for a while and haven't had to use, or?
We've probably had it for, I don't know, maybe 6 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Or so, maybe a little longer. And it's one of those things where the broker is great.
Yeah.
He's this old guy that's seen and heard everything. So nothing surprises him. He's been there, done that 100 times. And he just has he has good advice. I can call him.
Yeah.
It's amazing how often I would have assumed that you get insurance like that and you only talk to them when you have to re-up it.
Yeah.
But that's actually not the case. I mean, I call him and say, hey, what I've learned is they would much rather spend money up front before anything's really an issue. Right? The last thing in the world they want is a claim. So they would much rather help you out and spend money way before anything gets bigger.
Yeah.
So if something's a little funny, I call him. And they've been fantastic. I mean, worth the money that they spent on attorneys for me this year is, I'm sure, way, way, way more than I've spent on all of my premiums for all of my years.
Wow.
I've had insurance.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
So if you're a professional, get really good professional liability insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good takeaway. Anyone else have questions for Glenn or just things that came up as you were listening to his story?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Glenn, for everything you share. There's so much that I'm processing. It's funny because thank you also for the party we had. It was a fabulous party. It was
Yeah,
great.
the party was fun.
It was so much fun. And the food was delicious. I was actually, it's so funny. I just got back from Texas and last night, and we stopped by the grocery store on the way home. And I was thinking about the delicious cheeses that didn't have his spread. So I got to get some brie and some of that cranberry.
Yeah, we had a
cranberry goat
caterer.
cheese. It was amazing. I'm
Yeah.
not sure I can even replicate the
He
deliciousness
is
of
great.
that.
As a matter of fact, we need to get him on the Thrive and Grow list.
Yeah.
He's a really cool guy. Alexandra found him, but he was amazing. Yeah, he was cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun talking to everyone, seeing people I hadn't seen in a little while. And again, congratulations, with your 15 years. It's really a wonderful milestone. But some of the things that you said, I mean, there's so much that you said. It was interesting when you were talking about people who know you, who are discerning and empathetic and can say things to you. And when I was in Texas, and I was thinking about the whole process of structuring that into your life. And it was interesting when I was in Texas, I was doing a lot of driving, and the vehicle, it was a Kia like minivan. I was supposed to have a compact car, but they ran out of them, so they gave me this minivan. I didn't want to wait. I said, "Yeah, I'll take a minivan." But after I had driven about 2 hours, this little message popped on to the dashboard. Do you think you might want to take a coffee break? That's what it says. You think
Your van was talking to you?
Yes. Well, a little message flashed on the dashboard. And
Wow.
is it time for a break? Then there's like a little icon of a coffee cup. And I thought to myself, okay, am I weaving? Like, what's going on here? But I think it's just because I had been driving for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, it's a time for a break. Just like a little suggestion, a little question. But I thought to myself, that's so important to have, again, structured into your life, opportunities for people to speak to you, to observe, what's happening. And also just how precious it is to share stories. And I feel so honored, to hear your story, and for you to trust us, trust us, with your story, and to have an opportunity to share my story. It's like it's a precious gift. So I appreciate that. I think too, because you talked a little bit about, and I think it's not just men. I think that what I consider to be kind of compartmentalizing, and we can try to compartmentalize things, but it doesn't really work. Things can kind of seep from one world, one aspect of our world to the other, and we're gonna be influenced. And so I think there's that balance of moving on, but also the balance of taking time when we just have to grapple with something or grieve certain things, and just even going through a time when someone you love is sick, and you're concerned about them, that's going to impact you. And so sort of taking the time to incorporate that. Right now I need more space right now. I got to slow down a little bit from what I was doing before, to kind of, so I think there's that balance there.
But that's a good point, because it just occurs to me now that 2 of my events were kind of project client related and 2 were personal, that's kind of how it felt. And the personal ones are very different. Yeah, the personal ones aren't like just get over it and get around it and get by it. Those are different. Now that you're bringing that up, it's a good point.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
It's funny, you're talking about your van telling you when to stop. I learned a new term called bio break. Have you heard of a bio break? I had never heard of
Yeah. Or is it the same as a body break or something different? Like I've heard the term body break. Actually, I'm not sure.
it's
I've
a
heard
bathroom break.
Yeah. I heard body break
And
is what I've heard. Yeah.
so last weekend, for the first time in my life, I went on an off-roading event in New Hampshire. I have a new old vehicle that can handle that stuff. And I got my dog, and we signed up, and we went up there, and we drove around in the middle of nowhere in the absolutely glorious, beautiful gold and yellow leaves over rocks and roots and mud, like all this kind of stuff. But they're like, "Oh, this is our last chance for a bio break." I'm like, "What? What's a bio break?" Anyway, I'm trying in my older age, if something looks interesting to me, just do it. Just try it. Like in the past, I would have like analyzed it to death and not done it. And now I'm trying to like, you know what? Okay, that's so far out of my comfort zone. Let's just go for it.
Oh, rock on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Breaking up,
So
break up the monotony.
I recommend off-roading. It's fun. Gonna have to try some more of it.
Yeah, I was as Eva was talking, thinking about the breaks. Our body, not just sleep, but as the brain is active, it needs those mental breaks. It needs, time to recuperate. I forgot which doctor I was listening to on a podcast lately, but it is biology. Like we need time to reset. So even if we're taking a walk, but we're still listening to music or a podcast, that's not even necessarily giving the body a complete break. I'm talking just a complete like break, like take a walk in the woods, like an opportunity to just empty your mind of everything else, because the body actually needs that to rejuvenate. So a lot of times, like if you take that to more of a macro level, there are seasons and there are times when we really do just need to step back from what we're doing. Like you said, maybe you're not being productive. Maybe it's an issue of productivity because your mind state just not quite right there. And the best thing for you would be to just empty yourself and just reset, so to speak. So regarding your business, maybe that is after 15 years a time to, more again, more on a macro level. And I'm just speaking hypothetically, 10 to 15 year mark, step back, reassess the business from 30,000 feet up, and just understand like what's been working, because we fall blind to that. We fall into patterns of monotony. We fall into patterns of complacency, and in our paradigms as well. Like you said, in the past, you might have just overanalyzed something and not done it, but you're kind of at a different season now, and you're thinking differently. So I think that's all very healthy, and to be self-aware of that is, I think, the first step. Be self-aware that maybe I do need a break, maybe I do need to reassess things, or maybe I do need to start trying these new things out. Just that self-awareness is, I think, the first step. So I'm glad you're at least exhibiting that during this difficult time.
Well, we've been in the office, we've been trying to do the kind of reassessment much more often. I mean, for the first several years, I didn't do any of that stuff. And lately, and also part of it is an influence of my daughters, right? It's like, we at least once a year, we'll do like a kind of a major, let's see where we are, where we're going, what we want to be doing. But the other thing, as far as the kind of mentally, what I've discovered is that if I go play tennis, mentally, I cannot think about work or anything else while I'm playing tennis. It demands so much concentration. I can't think about anything else, which is a break, right? And now I've discovered that if you go off-roading, the driving over a whole bunch of rocks and stuff takes so much concentration, you can't think about anything else at all. So oddly enough, the concentrated thinking on something else gives you a mental break from the daily stuff that would, if I'm having a problem, it could be something simple at work. I might stay up half the night thinking about it, trying to solve it while I should be sleeping. And it's driving me nuts because I'm trying to solve a detail or whatever. And that's the last thing in the world I should be doing. And I have a hard time turning it off sometimes. So, if I can go play over a weekend 4 hours of tennis, that's at least 4 hours where it's not like I think about work 24/7, but those breaks are huge. They're a big deal. So.
And then also putting in an honest day's work and knowing when to just let it go until tomorrow. Just having that mental ability to just say it's bedtime, or I put in the honest day's work and let's just have to pick this up tomorrow, and not overstress or work too late into the evening. Kind of setting that expectation for yourself, I think, can help too. At least that's helped me in my life, because I used to stay up till 2, 3 a.m. just to bang something out or get it done. This is before kids. I don't have that stamina anymore, but just in general, now I know I pay for it tenfold if I'm up very late, because those kids got to get up at 6:30 in the morning no matter what, and there's only so much time in a day. So it's discipline too, I think. Absolutely discipline.
So what are you guys up to though? I mean,
well, I would love to hear, Ava, you went to a pitch contest the last time we talked, so maybe we can answer one question from there. Like, how was it? What's going on with the board game?
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, so it's been now almost 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks since I attended an event called Women in Toys at Women Empowerment Day. So I had an opportunity to pitch my game Match and Rhyme to 5 different companies. 4 with the potential of a licensing opportunity if they were interested, and then 1 retailer. So of the 5 that I pitched to, 3 were interested enough for me to make it to the next sort of stage of evaluation. And so with the Women in Toys organization, I think I mentioned that I was paired with a mentor that has a lot of experience in the toy industry. And I find, and this is probably true of every industry, without someone who has a lot of expertise and experience, you really are kind of just wandering around and without a lot of direction. So it's been helpful for me to have somebody who can help me navigate, the industry specifically. So anyway, I sent, of course, these thank you notes to each of the people that I met with. And so my mentor said, why don't you give them about 3 weeks and then follow up to say, just checking to see what your process is and your potential timeline. So that's exciting for me. One of the 4 potential licensing opportunities, she said to me that her company was really focused on younger children than the age group for my card game. And so she said, if I developed a variation of the game that paired, so you may remember that my game has rhyming words and colors and shapes. And so if you had a variation of your game that had words that you could pair with pictures and had something that's more kinesthetic rather than cards, to get back to her. And so I've been thinking about that over the past 3 weeks, and I've been studying, the types of games that they offer, this particular company. And so I've come up with something. And so I just said to my mentor, I think I have an idea that I think really work well with their line. And it's so I'll probably get back to her with this variation. It's not cards. It's actually kind of a beanbag game, because they have these different little beanbag games. Anyway, I've been excited about that. Even yesterday on the plane coming back, I think, okay, maybe I'll use this word instead. So that's Match and Rhyme. And then you may recall that I first got connected with Bishop Ward. Well, I mean, I knew him before, but in terms of business ideas. And when I was, and I developed this company called Love All Skin Tones, but it's been dormant for a while. but since I've been in kind of in the headspace of games that can include children, I've been rethinking love all skin tones. And so I'm coming up with these little characters that will be helpful for children to appreciate the beauty of all skin tones. So anyway, that's something else I've been working on. So I have these little characters, and actually Armin connected me to, or suggested that I use Fiverr to do certain types of for certain types of work. And I found someone who helped me to, with my little sketch, vectorize it. And, so I have these little characters now that I may put on some t-shirts this year. So hopefully I can do that this year. So anyway, that's what I've been up to. Thank you.
That's great, Ava. It's a great update. Exciting.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It's fun. It's fun, but I'm eager to actually have a sale. This is the thing. It's so funny because we have a accountant now for the first time. Well, we've had for the first time as of like a year or so ago. We actually have an accountant, but when I described all my business expenses, he said, "Well, you can't actually put any of these business expenses on your return until you have some revenue." Yeah, that's an important point. So like this year, I've got to like figure out a way to actually have a sale, so I can have a real business. So that's, yeah, you can be praying for me that these things come to fruition. Thank you.
Yes, that's great. Well, I kind of said this at the beginning. We're, my biggest new thing on my plate right now is just this program with the church and the gym, but really working with youth and movement and mentorship. And I was not expecting, I mean, it's East Boston, so I knew that it would be predominantly Latino kids, but I wasn't expecting that it would be all boys. It's been a long time since I've hung out with like middle school and high school boys. But yeah, so that's been my new fun thing. And just wearing those hats of like pastor, coach, and it's a lot of work because it's just a new thing on my plate, but I think it's been meaningful, and it's, the type of stuff that we're always thinking about as a church, like how do we really partner with the community for the good of the community and what's going on. So anyway, that's been my new fun thing. But again, I haven't hung out with young boys like that in a long time, so it's been a good learning curve. We did a version of the program 2 years ago, but at that point, like we only had girls in the program. So we've done, a version of this like movement and mentorship stuff, but we only had girls. So this time we only have boys. But at this age, I think it's actually good for them to maybe have their own separate spaces to have these conversations. And we're using movement as a way to talk about identity and like, who am I, and understanding the different parts of our identity, and just having this reflective space, but also like, how does that translate to how I can contribute to my community? What does it mean to be a part of my community, even as a like teenager? And what do I want to do with all these gifts and skills and talents and parts of my identity? And so we're using movement as a way to have those conversations. But it's been interesting to see the difference in the very similar types of movements and conversation with teenage girls versus teenage boys. But it's been a fun just learning curve in this season. So I think I mentioned this last time too, like the gym location shifted. So we were in like the moving process, but then Glenn, I kind of resonate on the back end, not on the front end at all with some of your stories, but there was one of the permits that they were supposed to have for the gym, they didn't have, or it got lost, or I don't know what happened. So they shut down the new location. So now we're back at the old location. And that's been the past month, just in my role as coach, but also from pastor side and church side, like we're staying at the old location because we still have access to that space. But just trying to like be there for the owners of the gym and coaches of the gym. And that's been kind of a back and forth mess, really. But in the midst of the mess, it's just been this fun time with the young kids. So that's been good. But yeah, that's my update. How about you, Armin? What's new?
Well, the biggest thing lately is I started grad school at the end of August, early September, and that's for 20 years in academia. Breaking it, it's quite the culture shock jumping jumping right back into it. But it's been amazing. I absolutely love the subject. It's Christian apologetics, and it's quite a different calling than my career as a designer. But just running a business and running a family, like, there's so much that carries over into both areas. And whether that means like projects that are more Christian based in the future for film or whatever it might be, or web, I'm not sure. Or you might even be working with churches or starting ministries. But I just know it's a subject that's just been on my heart and mind forefront for a very long time now. And it makes the workload that much easier to bear when you are just really into every little thing that you're studying and everything that you're doing. So far so good. It's not the ideal timing at all with the two little kids and the business to run, and coaching soccer, and working with Thrive and Grow and all this stuff. But not to mention financially, but it feels right. And I'm trying to just take it one step at a time, not trying to take on too much, doing 2 courses at a time, and just keeping track of the time and finances as diligently as possible during this whole process. But on the business end, we have this new division that's been really focusing on real estate, which is pretty cool, because after 10 years in business, it was great to adopt sort of a new industry and a new product. And I was actually talking to Glenn about this a little bit. We do 3D renderings for architects, for builders, for realtors, for new construction projects. And I always loved architecture as a child. I was always designing floor plans. I never went to architectural school. I think when I was younger, I visited an architect at work and got to see, and he sort of talked me out of the profession because maybe he was disgruntled or something, but he felt overworked and underappreciated. But I never pursued architecture, but I always had that love for it. So this kind of combines it now, where I can utilize a lot of the graphic design skills. I'm not actually doing the 3D rendering. I'm more managing the projects and cleaning up, the projects, as they're near the end, Photoshop and that sort of thing. But it's just been fun learning a new industry after 10 years, just taking a step back from the business and, bringing in a new product to kind of rejuvenate the excitement and rejuvenate the passion for the artistic creative work that we're doing here. And so everything else is still, kind of business as usual. But yeah, as I've now been in business now almost 13 years now, it really does merit understanding where the passion lies. And like Len said, even annually, just stepping back, reassessing, the whole journey of that year, what you could have done better. Also, what projects are the best fit too. So I mentioned we recently lost a big client, and it started off as a good business relationship, but definitely towards the last 6 months, you could tell that there was almost a little disconnect with the new management, and the projects were very much labored, and the communication wasn't perfect either. So sometimes there, like Glenn said, that there is it can be tough to lose a client, but in certain circumstances it can be a breath of relief if it wasn't quite working out ideally. So just having the wisdom after so many years in business to assess where you're at, assess what's happening, assess where your passions lie, maybe refocus, reconnect, maybe adopt something new that reinvigorates things. It's just all an amazing process. It just comes with time to really learn more about yourself and the work that you're doing. And then a lot of it does have to be left up to chance too. There's I definitely was not anticipating that I'd ever go back to grad school, albeit for this particular subject. So sometimes God has plans that we just don't know, and that we have to succumb to that. We have to, give up, drop our guard and just let it happen, and just be diligent and focus the whole journey, because there's nothing else we can do other than just doing the best we can, for the glory of God and the goodness of others. And like Glenn said, when we focus that way, then Sunday is coming. We'll figure out Romans 8:28 at some point in that process of where the good will finally come. But that's all we can really do in the tough times. But just in general, just be diligent, be good workers, be dedicated and humble. And I think that's as far as we can take it.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Well, with our last kind of couple minutes here, we'd love to just take some time to pray. Glenn, we definitely want to pray for your dad. I hear you on that. And then Ava, we're going to pray for that sale this year. Is there anything else that folks just want to bring into the space that we can pray into? All right. Well, Armin, do you want to close us out in prayer?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Cool.
All right. Dear God, Almighty God, we come to you humbly, knowing we don't have all the answers. We come to you humbly, knowing that your ways are not our ways. And it's always a journey, understanding retrospectively, what you had going on for us, all the workings going on underground to eventually cultivate what you end up giving us. We pray especially today for Glenn, and we thank you so much for the wonderful testimony and the courage to share it on Glenn's part. Thank you for putting that on Glenn's heart today, that his words could provide wisdom to us, but also hope for us, and the attitude that he shares, having come out of this difficult time, but looking forward ahead to the next phase in his business. And we continue to pray for his father as well. We know this is a difficult time for Glenn, and understanding what the priorities in life really are when it comes to work and family. Understanding that everything on this earth is temporary, but we carry these relationships our whole entire lives. And we work towards eternity with you, Lord, and eternity with the ones we love. So pray for strength during this difficult time for Glenn, and happiness and hope and peace throughout all of this as well, Lord. We pray for Ava. We know the wonderful journey she's been on with this game that she's working on to benefit the lives of so many children, encourage them in their development and their skills over the duration of their childhood. Thank you for putting that on her heart, Lord. You call people like Ava to fill in gaps where there's a need, and for specific things to help children develop their intelligence and develop their vocabulary and develop their mindset. Thank you for people like Ava to really break down these barriers and put it all on the line, and just pray for her during this time to see some fruits of that labor. I know she's been working so hard, Lord. And thank you for Sarah's dedication to this group, wonderful leader that she's been, and just a wonderful leader in everything that she does, reaching out to this new demographic of children that can absolutely benefit from your love and your wisdom. And thank you for working through Sarah to reach this community that she lives, that her church serves, and keep her focused and diligent on your ways and on your wisdom, and sharing that with everybody. We pray this, Lord, with thanksgiving for the sacrifice that you made, so that we may have this relationship and this ability to talk with you. This is not something we take lightly, Lord, and we understand everything that you've given us and everything that we have to be thankful for. And we just continue to do the best we can with diligence, with hope, to follow your ways.
Yes, Lord.
In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, y'all. Well, thank you, Glenn. Once again, thanks for sharing your story. And everybody, thanks for sharing your stories today. As Ava said, like, storytelling is just such a sacred thing that we get to share with one another. So thanks. Enjoy this day, whether it brings tennis or whatever you're up to today. Just enjoy the day, and we'll talk soon. God bless everybody.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Right.
See ya.
Amen.
Bye.